Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Dodge this.
Se ut kapskan thurskelt för sin mom. Stroh för det det som girl what's no sex and we is much how we say no men when we will hot sky come knowledge see a little. Now everyone, don't go reaching for your phones and expecting that your phone just broke. All I did there, I played the audio that I captured at the very beginning in reverse, which is a little tip to the movie we watched. But before we jump into that, I have to introduce my dear co-host, my loving friend, my good companion, Jeffrey Nichols.
Why, thank you. Shucks, you're going to make me blush with an introduction like that. Who are you?
I was going to say I'm Nathanael Lirio, but it's funny. I feel like whenever I introduce you, that's kind of how you respond. I feel like if people clipped all of our introductions of each other, we would just sound super gay.
I think we would. That should be a reel. We should make that into a reel.
Just us like falling in love with each other.
A secret fourth reel. Yeah, because we usually do 3 reels a week.
Imagine we don't post it. We just make a reel of us looking gay for ourselves. That's it. It's just we kind of watch it in the nighttime. We send it to each other when we're lonely.
Yeah, I would cherish it.
Very good. But folks, we're not talking about how gay Jeffrey and I are together, not at least in this podcast. Today, as I kind of hinted at before, we're talking about Christopher Nolan's Memento. That's right, a movie that works better if you watch it backwards. This is a long time coming. So this was for my category of film crush. I feel like it could have been my dealer's choice because I love Christopher Nolan. I think this is all but one of his films that I've watched. I think I have like 1 or 2 left. And I chose it for movie crush because growing up, I really, really liked the character Trinity from the Matrix series. She was badass. She was cool. I love Neo, so I really liked their dynamic. She was all leather and just like this really cool character. But I didn't want to review the Matrix in the podcast yet because it's like my favorite movie of all time. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until we have viewers who actually care about this gosh darn podcast before I discuss my favorite movie. So we're going to review the Matrix at some point, but maybe it'll be season 10. Who knows? So that got me curious. I didn't know a lot about the actress's body of work. So I looked her up on Letterboxd and lo and behold, she's one of the leads in Memento. And I was like, that's a movie I wanted to watch forever. So bada boom, bada bing, here we are discussing it. And that actress is none other than Carrie-Anne Moss. I believe that is her name. As much as having a crush on her as a kid, I didn't know anyone's names. Carrie-Anne Moss. So she plays Trinity in The Matrix and she plays Natalie in Memento. And just, I think she absolutely crushed her role. Before, normally we jump into the behind the scenes about like how the movie got made and our general thoughts. Just really quick, Jeffrey, be honest. Did you like Natalie, the character, and did you like Carrie-Anne Moss's performance since this was my childhood crush? And do you see it? You see the crush?
I see
you
it.
See her?
I see the vision here. No, I see it. She's a good pick. And I'm
going to interrupt you because in my defense, Jeffrey hasn't seen The Matrix. And in The Matrix, she's awesome, badass, and dates the chosen one. In this movie, she's a piece of garbage. So I understand why maybe out of this movie, she wouldn't be a childhood crush unless you're like a cuck.
Yeah.
So to all our cucks.
Because what I was going to say is Natalie, garbage, trash human being, worst of the worst. We hate her here, right? But Carrie-Anne Moss, that's the actor's name, right? Fabulous, beautiful, magnificent performance. I really enjoyed her character. I enjoyed her character. I did not like her character, but I enjoyed her immensely.
Yeah. It's funny because this movie came out, I think 2000 or two. Actually, I have it right here. So why would I guess? It came out in, September of 2000. The Matrix came out in, I believe, August of 1999. So this came out a year after. So, between filming, maybe she's 2 years older, maybe. But and granted, maybe it's just because I watched The Matrix a bunch when I was like 12, but I swear she looked so old in The Matrix. And this movie, she looked so young. So I thought this movie was a good 5, 6, 7 years before The Matrix, but it's actually post The Matrix. So I'm sure it's a combination of like, makeup and costume design. She's supposed to look old and weathered in The Matrix. And this, she's like a hot bartender. But also I'm sure it's like Nathaniel's childhood brain of being a 12-year-old. She looks a lot older than she actually is to you.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I have not seen The Matrix. So that's one of the movies I'm looking forward to covering on the podcast. So listeners, explode, um, in the sense of like propagate.
Yeah, so we can review The Matrix. Speaking of listeners exploding, we're about to get into this movie, I swear. It's a movie with a lot of meat and potatoes to discuss. But I'm upset. Dougal is slowly becoming one of our most watched YouTube videos. And why, audience? We want to watch films with you and discuss them in the film theory and get into them and become better filmmakers by watching these movies. And Dougal is what you decide to like watch.
Well,
Shame on you.
People nowadays are becoming more interested in the finer arts. So I mean, that's why, right?
It's all derived from Dougal, as we said in the last episode. But anyways, before I go on a rabbit trail, let's jump into it. So Memento, Christopher Nolan's, I believe, second feature film. And this honestly reminded me so much of Reservoir Dogs' story. Like, not story in the sense of like the narrative, but story how it got made and the scrappiness of it and the cheapness of it, like as far as like the budget and how great it was. So this was just an awesome movie. And how it actually got made is kind of interesting. So if you guys, everyone knows Christopher Nolan. We don't need to go into his film liturgy and everything he's done. One of the most famous directors and writers of this century when it comes to movies. Awesome filmmaker. But I don't know how many of you guys know about Jonathan Nolan. Jeffrey, do you know about Jonathan Nolan?
I'd have to imagine he is an author, because he wrote the short story that this movie was based off of.
This is correct. And not only an author, he is the younger brother to Christopher Nolan. So yes, as Jeffrey said, this movie is based off of a short story that Jonathan Nolan wrote, Christopher Nolan's younger brother. And they kind of wrote it in tandem. It was Jonathan's original idea, and he started trading this idea back and forth, and Christopher then started kind of writing in tandem the script. So they kind of evolved at the same time, but like the core original idea did come from his brother. And so for those of you who don't know, Jonathan Nolan helped co-write basically all of his like hits, like all of the trilogy of the Batman movies, Interstellar, The Prestige. He did all of them. And then he also wrote and directed the first 3 live action episodes of Fallout, which is the new like video game movie or TV show. He also created the shows Person of Interest and Westworld. I also know Westworld is like super renowned for being some great writing. So all in all, he is a good writer. He's good.
I did not know this. This is crazy. I mean, Jonathan Nolan. You hear about Chris. You never hear about Jonathan. Did he have a hand in writing Oppenheimer and his more recent hits as well? Or
I don't believe so, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm not surprised if maybe not like splintered off because they had a falling out or anything, but I wonder if the brothers are both kind of doing their own things. I think they still work together, but I don't know if Oppenheimer was done with them. But also, since they're all kind of keeping it in the family, Nolan's wife, Emma, I don't remember her last name because I think she kept her last name because she was in the movie world when they got married, so they wanted to keep things separate. But she produces a lot of his movies. She actually is the reason this movie got made. So as Christopher Nolan was kind of co-writing it with his brother, he showed it to his wife, and his wife brought it to a TV executive, and he's the one that got behind it. So again, this story reminds me of Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino's first movie. You know, he writes it, it's scrappy, it's few locations, it's just some core cast, some good acting, and then it gets shown to a friend who shows it to a director or an actor, and that actor gets it in the hands of a studio who helps fund the money. And so that's how this movie gets made. And it gets made on a budget of about $8 million, and it ended up making $40 million. So it did really well at the box office. Our cast, super important because, again, it's one of those movies with not a ton of locations and like a pretty stripped back main cast. That main cast really shines. We have Guy Pearce, who was Lenny Shelby, who Guy Pearce at the time was pretty like undiscovered. Nolan specifically said, I didn't want to blow our budget on A-list actors. They were looking at casting, oh my gosh, he was just in the F1 movie. Why can't I remember his name?
Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt. Yeah, Brad Pitt. Also, funny enough, half of this movie, I thought this was Brad Pitt. Because Brad Pitt is in, why am I blanking on every movie ever made? Fight Club. Fight Club. because Lenny Shelby's character reminded me of the main character in Fight Club. So I think for the first 10 minutes, I thought it was Brad Pitt, but this was Guy Pearce. So they originally wanted to be Brad Pitt, but Brad Pitt couldn't do it because of conflict issues. And so after that, Nolan was like, you know what? Instead of spending like half our budget on a A-star list actor, let's just find someone who can act well and cast them. And that kind of started Guy Pearce's acting career. From there, you have Carrie Ann Moss, who played Natalie. The casting director just liked her in The Matrix. You know, that was hot off the press, literally last like the summer beforehand. And they casted her. And it was actually Carrie Ann Moss who suggested her co-star on The Matrix, not Keanu Reeves, but Joe Pantoliano, who plays John Edward or Teddy. And he plays the bad guy in the first Matrix. And so I guess that's maybe kind of a spoilers for The Matrix, but not really. And so that was fun to see how she got brought on, and then she brought on her previous co-star from The Matrix. And that is our main cast.
Well, the fun thing about this for me is I was unfamiliar with any of those names, any of those actors. And so I feel I could immerse myself in the story more, right? If there's a really big name in a movie that everyone knows, sometimes it's hard to separate the character from Leonardo DiCaprio, you know? But in this case, Lenny was Lenny. Teddy was Teddy. Natalie was Natalie, right? Except Teddy wasn't Teddy. Teddy was John Gemelli, right? But we'll get into that.
All the characters felt really real. Because even though I recognized two of them from The Matrix, my favorite movie of all time, I thought they blended in so well. And it took me a while to realize that Teddy was played by Joe Pantoliano, however you say his last name. Because I was like, he reminds me so much. Because once you watch The Matrix, Jeffrey, I think his character's name was Scyther, maybe. I don't know. Once you watch it, you'll get what I mean. He has such a memorable grime and voice to him. There's something on his tongue, like the timbre of his voice, that's so memorable. So I had like about 10, 20 minutes in this movie, I'm like, I know he's from somewhere. And that's when it finally dawned on me. I was like, wait a minute. He's the same person that acted with Carrie Ann Moss in The Matrix. So I think he did a great job. I think he embraced phenomenally.
Yeah. How different was this performance from that performance?
Different, but what was similar, because there are similarities in his character and in the Matrix character, at the end of the movie where he kind of gives the big twist, the big reveal. His like exasperation, I would say, because the whole movie, Teddy is like a super go-lucky, chill guy. Hey, what's up? And then he finally has his breaking point where he tells the twist. And just his like annoyance and I'm so over it type of like, I'm over your bullshit type of thing. And he says it so like matter-of-factly. There's a very similar scene to that in The Matrix that really reminded me. That's in that moment. I was like, oh, I see these characters kind of being similar. They're these characters that are lying to everyone around them. They're kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing. And then when you finally see who they really are, kind of a garbagey, scummy person. So weirdly enough, similar characters.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big theme of this movie. It's just deceit.
Everyone
right?
sucks.
And, yeah, everyone sucks, and everyone's out to get you, and you can't always trust yourself and your memories, right? They lie to you. I think it was very well done. I think the story would not have had the power that it did if it had been told linearly, right, in chronological order.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I think that was one of the, there's so many things we could point to why it was so great and like kind of a cult classic. I guess this wasn't a cult classic. It was just a classic. It was just good. But we'll get into that in just a minute. I think the last thing I wanted to say is awards. It won a ton of awards from everyone. So I'm not going to go through all of them. But what I will say, almost every award ceremony, it won multiple awards. And it almost always won an award for best screenplay, best writing. So I think audience really keep that in mind. I think the writing is just like, so solidly done. And I think that's what we love. And that's why I really wanted to highlight Jonathan Nolan as well as Christopher Nolan. You know, I think they're a team. I think they're both writers, and the director really takes the writing and tells the story. But I wanted to highlight Jonathan because it's always the story. It's always the words and how the world is created that makes Nolan's movie so great. But with all that being said, here's a little synopsis of Memento if you have no idea what we're talking about. Memento follows Leonard Shelby, a man suffering from short-term memory loss, who uses tattoos and notes to hunt for his wife's killer. Told in a fragmented, reverse structure, the film puts viewers inside Leonard's distorted mind as truth and memory blur together. So ultimately, it's a pretty simple story. It's guy's wife gets murdered and he's chasing the killers. We've seen it 100 times before. Nothing complicated. Simple. But what Nolan does to complicate it, to make it fresh, is he gives our main character short-term memory loss. So it's not amnesia. Basically, any new memory post the accident, he will forget within a few minutes. So he can be present for a conversation, but as soon as he kind of leaves the room, he forgets that conversation. He forgets who that person was. And so, he knows who he is. He knows his upbringing. He knows his wife. He knows how to eat and drive and do all this stuff. It's just all new memories made get washed away to the point of the incident, which the incident was his wife being murdered and then him getting a concussion. What a great plot device for a film. Like Jeffrey, how much did you know going into this movie?
I didn't know anything. I came in completely blind. Like, you announced that we were watching Memento. I had no idea what that was. We didn't even discuss the premise at all. And so the moment I found out what it was about was the moment that I pressed play, which was a beautiful way to experience this movie. Completely blind, not knowing what I was getting into, because that's what Leonard was doing throughout the whole movie, is just going in blind, having no idea what he's getting into, having to rely on notes and pictures that he's left for himself. And so I'm very glad that I got to experience it in that way. And when we learned about his condition, right, that struck me. I thought that was very interesting, because that's actually a real condition.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading this book called Atomic Habits. I don't think I finished it, but in the beginning, they're telling the anecdote of someone with that very condition, right? They'd underwent this accident. They couldn't form new memories, but they remembered everything fine prior to that. And they're talking about the struggles that his wife underwent to sustain a sense of normalcy. And then she was a saint, right? But they were trying to establish certain patterns of behavior in him. And they were able to. Leonard talks about habit, and he is a man of routine, right? Well, in the case of this gentleman, in order to get him exercise, they would walk around the neighborhood every morning and every evening. And this is a new thing that they'd started doing after his accident. Well, eventually, one day, she wakes up and he's not in the home. And she's freaking out, trying to figure out where did he go. She calls the police. Later, he shows up at the door, and he'd gone on that walk, right? How? Muscle memory, right? And his body started recognizing cues along their usual path, right? That would get him to his final destination. Then one day there was a road closure, and then he got genuinely lost. But there was an element of habit that he was able to still develop in this state.
Well, that's super fascinating, because the movie, and man, something you got to realize about this movie, it does such a great job playing with the idea of an untrustworthy narrator. We cannot trust the narrator, because he's literally forgetting everything and being lied to. Granted, you can't trust any of that was like Jeffrey said, deceit. You can't trust any of the characters. You don't know if they're telling lies or not lies. But the story Jeffrey just said, basically our main character, Lenny, he has this tattoo. He has a bunch of tattoos with information about the mystery of his murder of his wife. But one of them is, remember Sammy Jenkins. And it's a crucial part of the narrative of the story. But basically, Lenny's character was I used to work in insurance fraud. Basically when people wanted money from the insurance company, I meant to go make sure it wasn't fraudulent. And one of his clients was Sammy Jenkins. He got in a car accident and he got this memory wiping condition. And Lenny had an idea of well, hey, if it's just your memory, surely you can still build muscle memory, like Jeffrey was saying in the story. But Sammy Jenkins couldn't learn muscle memory stories. But it's so fascinating, because man, this movie just makes your head spin, because yes, people have people who are the leading researchers on this real diagnosis phenomenon make people in college and who are researching it watch this movie, because they say it's the best example of this condition portrayed. But then you might ask yourself, well, it's technically portrayed incorrectly here. But it's because Lenny is an untrustworthy narrative, which we'll get more into with his story and Sammy's story. But I think he's lying to himself. That's why because arguably in our real life, people with this condition can hypothetically learn muscle memory. But in Lenny's story, Sammy couldn't learn muscle memory things. He wasn't able to. And so I think that's just another notion that Lenny is untrustworthy, not only because people are lying to him, but I think because he's lying to us, the audience.
Mm-hmm. And I also wonder, in the case of Sammy, if his muscle memory was being trained in the opposite direction, right? They're thinking, oh, like if he keeps on getting electrocuted, then he's going to eventually learn, even unconsciously, that he shouldn't go for that object, right? But if his body is consistently going towards that one specifically, even if it's getting shocked, then maybe that's the motion that's being memorized. It's less about avoiding unconsciously a stimulus. It's more about repeating a behavior that he has repeated over and over again. No, that's the thing. Lenny being an unreliable narrator makes the story so compelling. We see in the beginning, right? He's describing his system to people, right? I'm not like Sammy Jenkins, right? I have a system and I organize my notes. Sammy didn't organize his notes, and so he got lost easily, right? And he's prepping his stuff and he looks like a badass. And we're thinking, okay, we're going to be taking on an action-packed thriller ride of this badass detective overcoming his limitations. But then the more the movie goes on, the more you begin to realize, oh, this guy's kind of pathetic, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is sad. He's just being taken advantage of left and right, and even by himself at the end. And that's the beauty of the film.
Yeah, it's such a shame because out of all the films we discussed, this is a film we should take act by act, beat by beat, because it's so complicated to dissect it. The issue is, it's one of the few films that's so hard to dissect act by act and beat for beat, because like Jeffrey said earlier, this film is not told linearly. So basically the whole concept is, as I said, he's tracking down his wife's murderer. But we are stuck in a very small part of that story. He basically, seemingly what we are to understand, he has arrived in this town, some random no backwater town with, really crappy motels and crappy bars in the middle of like desert California type of vibes. And the only clue, well, one of the few clues he has is this person's name is John G. So first name John, last name G. And he's hunting him down. And the movie opens with him killing someone. The movie opens with him like taking a photo of a dead body that he just shot. And then we basically work backwards from that moment to the beginning of how we got into the town. So the movie doesn't tell things. It's not like, oh, I rolled into town. I met this character and this character and this character. And then I slowly solved the mystery. And then I found the killer and I shot them. And then that's the end. It like started with the murder of someone. We don't know who. And then it just gave us fragments of a piece of like the middle of the story, and then a piece of the end of the story, and then a piece of the beginning of the story. The story is kind of technically told reverse, but it's not fully like backwards. So it just makes it very hard to track and break down, but it also makes it very engaging. Jeffrey, going in knowing nothing, did you have a hard time grasping the concept? And when the movie ended, be honest, did you feel like you completely understood it?
I think that I didn't have a hard time grasping what they were doing with the editing. I think it was very well executed and clearly executed, despite it being so unusual a premise, right? The thing that impressed me was I felt that I was being thrown into Lenny's experience. This is giving me a taste of life in someone else's body. Like, it was giving me a taste of Lenny's struggles in a way that I could not have otherwise experienced. With each flashback, I guess you could say, with each reversal in time, I'm being thrown into a situation that I do not know the context of. And that's exactly where Lenny finds himself. One moment in particular that I enjoyed, one particular flashback, was when he shows up in that motel room and he doesn't know where he is, but he has a bottle in his hand. He's like, well, I don't think I've been drinking. I don't feel drunk. Sort of sniffs his armpit and he sees the shower. He's like, well, I might as well take a shower, right? When this is literally the worst moment to be taking a shower. It's not even his motel room, and it's the motel room of the guy that is trying to kill him, right? And so that just made it very clear how vulnerable Lenny was in all of this, right? He says that he can't be taken advantage of at the beginning, or that's what he puts forth to this man on the telephone, but he's so easy to take advantage of. It's tragic.
I will say he definitely easy to take advantage of. But the fact that he got and we'll get to the twist later, but like the fact is he did as much as he got done with his condition is insane. Because just imagine, like, you have no basis point for anything. Like the minute you leave a room and start a new conversation, it's all gone. Like you don't know why you're there. Like it would be you would literally be living in fragmented moments that were tethered to nothing. And so and like Lenny said, so I just have to trust myself. When I wake up and just like realize I'm in a bar, realize I've been beaten left in a ditch, realize I just woke up next to a woman who I don't even know. Did I have sex with her? Did I kidnap her? Did she kidnap me? I just have to trust that what I did in the previous time I did for a reason. So it's just crazy, like that he got anywhere. Like this man should just be stuck in a loop of like waking up, taking a shit, and going back to bed. The fact that he can get from town to town and like murder people is crazy.
Like as many points of weakness as his system has, it's definitely a very impressive system.
And I love, man, Nolan did it is a airtight alibi what Nolan did with this short-term memory loss for two reasons. One, the crazy editing of nonlinear works perfectly because, like Jeffrey said, when we cut into a scene where we have they do it all the time. We'd literally be in one moment and they cut to him in a bar talking to someone that we have no idea who that person is. And there was an element of narration. Lenny would constantly be narrating in his own head. How did I get here? I'm already talking to this person, so they must not hate me. I guess I'll just continue the conversation. Like, it justifies that type of editing storytelling because that is literally what our main character is going through. They don't know the context of what just happened or what's about to happen. They're just here. It also creates, which I'm really excited to talk about later, like one of my main concepts of this, it creates an airtight alibi to do whatever the frick you want. Nothing is real. Everything is fake. No one can be trusted because there's no real sense of continuity. You don't know if what Lenny said is true because he doesn't know truth from fiction. Someone could tell him something in this moment and he's going to forget it in the next. So there's literally zero reliable source of information, which makes the open-ended ending of this movie amazing. I don't often like open-ended movies. They can be done well sometimes, but I think this is the perfect way to do an open-ended movie because quite literally, no one knows the truth. So you kind of have to make it up. And we've been making up the truth this entire movie because Lenny is just stumbling. Someone tells him this. Now someone tells him this. Someone writes this on his arm. Someone puts this note in his pocket. He's literally just being fed information and he has no idea where it's coming from. And so just this great plot device idea of the short-term memory loss, just 10 out of 10 when it comes to writing because Nolan just could do whatever he wanted and there was no wrong.
I feel like there's this interesting tension between these two ideas, right? Idea number one, you can't trust anything, right? And idea number two, things happen, right? And things matter, right? So Lenny, he can't retain memories for more than a few minutes, right? And so one could say that he is essentially a new person every few minutes, right? But at the same time, all the actions that he takes informs how the world around him interacts with his future self, right? And you cannot separate him from his history and from the actions that he has taken and from the people that he has affected. And so he's talking about mirrors at the end, and that's exactly what everyone around him is. Even when they're lying to him, what they're reflecting back to him consequences of concrete decisions that he made. And so, perhaps there isn't much psychological continuity between him in this moment and him in that moment. But he's definitely made a series of decisions that has impacted the world in very concrete ways. And so that's just an interesting tension.
I mean, there is that scene where he's like arguing like my choices matter. Like when I think it was Carrie, it was either Teddy or Natalie's character was talking about him like, why does it even matter if you kill your wife's killer? You're not going to remember. And he's like, I don't have to remember my actions for them to have meaning, which is, I think, an interesting concept. He's like, hey, I don't care if I remember any of it. As long as that person's dead, it will be worth it. And plus, I have a feeling once they're dead, something will change. It's kind of an idea he planted. Unfortunately, that's not the case. Okay. So let's talk about the characters. I think again, this being such a complicated idea, but ultimately very simple simple execution. Not very, like, there's a hotel, there's this abandoned factory, there's a woman's house, all very bland, boring locations that are shot kind of boringly. Like, I think the cinematography works perfectly for the story, but it's nothing great, nothing grand, I would say. And then there's just mostly 3 actors. So the story really revolves around misdirection and the editing, but also I think the 3 actors did such a great job. So let's talk a little bit about them. We have Lenny, going through scene to scene, literally not remembering what comes before him. Then we have Teddy, kind of the first main character we're introduced to. Teddy at first is this scummy guy. We don't know what he's about yet, but he definitely seems scummy. What does he want from Lenny? We're also led to believe, also for the audience, Teddy is the person that is killed in the opening scene. We open up with Lenny shooting someone in the head, and that's Teddy. So we know at the beginning of the movie, okay, he gets killed. Is he John G? Is he the murderer of the wife? But all of a sudden, whoa, he's palling around with Lenny like it's no big deal. What's going on here? And then we have Natalie. Natalie is arguably the love interest. She relates to Lenny for some mysterious reason. She seems kind. She seems like she's taking him in, going to help him out. So we have these 2 characters. And these 2 characters kind of have a reversal by the end. Not fully, but like Natalie ends up being very manipulative and very abusive to Lenny. And then Teddy, we find out, actually is a cop who originally helped Lenny track down his wife's murderer, and now is using Lenny as a short-term memory loss assassin, where basically Teddy sets up like drug busts so he can steal the money, and then will make Lenny think that drug person is his wife's murderer, and then he'll kill him, getting rid of the evidence for Teddy. So what did you think of these characters?
First, I'm going to say, like, I don't like Teddy, but by the end of the movie, don't you kind of like Teddy? I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. My thinking is, well, he's going to split the profits with him. Yeah, he's taking advantage of Lenny, but...
Is he splitting the profits with Lenny? I don't think he is.
I don't think he is. He's not. But beer was going to be on him.
That's what he did say, beer. And he did stay. We don't know if this is true, and we'll get into this at the end. But he did say he helped, like he was the only cop that believed Lenny that there was a second invader. Because the whole thing was like Lenny woke up in the middle of the night. There were 2 invaders sexually abusing his wife. He shot and killed one, but the second one knocked him out, causing him to have this short-term memory loss. But no one believed that there was a second invader. They're like, there was just the one and you killed him. Teddy was the only cop that believed him. And Teddy says, hey, we tracked down your wife's killer and we killed him a long time ago. So you got to admit, if he's not lying, at least he helped there,
Yeah. Like Teddy's definitely a piece of work, and he's definitely using Lenny. But maybe at the beginning there was some sense of effed up altruism behind his actions. Yeah, he's just like he's making use of his resources, I guess. Which is not what you should do. You should not be treating a person as resources, and I think that's the one of the running motifs. Maybe motif isn't the right word. Just running themes is everyone's using him. Everyone's using Lenny because they can, but perhaps it's not like a major theme. That's something that was on my mind throughout. It's like taking advantage of a honestly like mentally handicapped individual.
Who did you think was the least shitty person out of the 3?
Lenny. Precisely because he is I don't think he's stellar. I don't think he's good necessarily, but he's living with a very difficult condition, right? And because of all of the notes that he's compiled, he is primed to behave in a certain way in certain environments. And we hear from Teddy that like he's not a killer naturally, and that's what makes him so good.
That's an interesting concept, because I don't know who's the worst, but I'd like to say that Lenny is a killer. You have this great dialogue that, again, this theme of memory and killing and what does it mean to kill someone. You have this scene earlier with Natalie and Lenny, and they get into an argument because Natalie's like, hey, will you kill this drug dealer who's after me? He's trying to kill me. If you really care about me, will you go kill him? And Lenny says, what do you take me for, a murderer? And she's like, all you are doing is trying to murder a person. You have it tattooed on your chest, kill John G. And he's like, well, that's different. It's for love. And she's like, well, what, and she's like, no, that's BS. Like, what would you kill for? Would you just kill for love? I didn't love your wife, and like, you're still killing, like, is it just your love that matters? And so she presents this idea of like, kind of calling him on your BS. Like you'd be willing to kill for more than just love. And then we get to the very end of the movie, the big twist. So basically we find out that Lenny's wife survived the sexual assault because it's been to believe that she was sexually assaulted and murdered in the bathroom. She survived it, but she couldn't come to terms that Lenny now has this new short-term memory loss. He can't remember what happened to his wife. He can't really remember who she is or make new memories. And so the idea is that Lenny kills her either out of like assisted suicide or some other reason, but Lenny is kind of the reason she ends up dying. And the idea is he does have short-term memory loss, but he can't also deal with this guilt, so he's running from it. And the very end of the movie, Teddy brings all this up because Teddy knows all of this. He's like, dude, your wife lived. You're the reason she's dead. We already tracked down the killer. You should be better. You're not. And Lenny doesn't want to hear any of this. He's pissed off. He leaves. And we see him set into motion the entire movie that we just watched unfold. He starts leaving trails and breadcrumbs to make him think Teddy, because Teddy's real name is John, last name G. And so the reason he goes by Teddy is he doesn't want Lenny to get confused that he's the killer. And so Lenny starts to basically set up the breadcrumbs to set up Teddy in his mind so he'll kill him, which is what the whole movie is about, him tracking down Teddy and killing him. So in that moment, Lenny knew that Teddy wasn't the killer. He literally says, okay, if all I'm good for is killing and all I'm good for is looking for the next John G, why don't you be my John G? What difference does it make? As long as I have someone to hunt, as long as I have something to numb the pain, as long as I have something to make me forget, quite literally, what I did to my wife, it doesn't matter. So all I'm trying to say, arguably, Lenny is a murderer and is willing to do it. And he's willing to do it more than just love, for just love.
He's a murderer, but he's a coward, right? Because he couldn't just shoot Teddy then and there, right? He couldn't kill him in the moment. And so he had to set things in motion where he would genuinely believe that he was killing his wife's rapist. But in that moment, he knew that Teddy wasn't the killer. And so it's very interesting. We have a character that does not want to see themselves as a killer. But when you get to the brass tacks of it, they'll do anything to give themselves a sense of purpose.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I like what you said, he's a coward. Every character is a coward. Everyone is trying to do their actions, they're killing, they're stealing through Lenny, because Lenny forgets. And Lenny himself is a coward because he's running from his own truth that he murdered his wife and that he can't live with it. And so it's just another idea, like everyone's deceitful, everyone is a coward. Like none of these characters are really redeemable. They're all kind of crappy people. And it just makes it all the more interesting to watch. Who out of the three was your most? Who did you enjoy watching the most? What's whose character or character arc?
Man, I think that Natalie's story is very interesting, very compelling. She's the one that is the most explicit about her deception. Yeah, she straight up tells him, "Listen, in a few seconds, you're not going to remember any of this, so I'm going to lie to you, and I'm going to tell you straight up." I'm going to lie to you and I'm going to make you do what I want you to do against your wishes. But then come to find out, like, she has a reason to have somewhat of a vendetta against him. He killed her boyfriend, right, who was a drug dealer, right? And that was the person that in the beginning we see him look at the photograph and it says, "You can trust Natalie. She sympathizes you because she recently lost someone." And Lenny's the one that caused her loss. And so that was very interesting, very compelling. Like she sees Lenny wearing her boyfriend's suit. And she immediately is clued in that something is very wrong. And she probably knew from that moment that her husband, her boyfriend was not alive.
And I like that her story, you kind of have to piece together yourself. Like, she's not the main focus of the movie. She doesn't get like a resolution in the movie. So you really have to piece together, since it's all backwards, you have to figure out when she starts to realize things and what she starts to do. Because basically, Lenny just shows up at the bar she owns randomly because he stole her dead boyfriend's suit. And in the suit, there was a note that said, "Go to this bar, you'll meet Natalie." And he thinks, "Oh, I must have wrote this for myself and I just forgot." And so he shows up. And then she's like, who the heck are you? But she takes him in, come to my house, come stay with me. I'm sympathizing with you because I lost someone. And we think it's another loved one. All to realize, oh, she's like, why the heck are you wearing my boyfriend's suit and car? He's been missing. You clearly have something to do with it. But like none of that's verbatimly said or brought up at all. So it's all things you have to piece together. So I love that her story is so intertwined with Lenny's. It's so intertwined with the main story, but it's all in the background. None of it's said, none of it's fully dealt with or like has a nice, neat ending. It's just something you have to piece together as you watch it.
No, that's a good point. I'm really glad that there wasn't a moment where it's like, aha, I actually did this because you killed my boyfriend, right? No neat bows. I think that for that reason, Natalie's character arc is one of the most compelling for me. But here's what I'll say about that note that was left in Jimmy's suit. Jimmy was her boyfriend. Lenny makes a fuss early on about how you have to learn like what your handwriting is, because otherwise people will deceive you. And he seems to think that he's got a good hold on his handwriting. But in that moment, he just doesn't give a shit. And he finds himself deceived by this note in his jacket. And I guess he assumes that it's his or I don't know. We just see as the movie progresses that there are a lot of holes in the system that he takes so much pride in.
Yeah, which again, another thing that I love. I feel like any other movie you could point. I think these are plot holes, but again, it's told by this very mentally unwell person that is not only has this condition of short-term memory loss, but he also is so guilt-driven that he himself is building this narrative, building this false narrative, so he can deal with anything but the fact that he killed his wife. And so you have these two things coming together, which basically creates undeniability of our plot character. He can do whatever he wants because he's in such denial that anything could be true for him. So I feel like I love that this narration of I have a system. I won't be fooled. I won't be taken advantage of. And everything he says, the opposite happens throughout the entire movie. And like you said, Jeffrey, he's like, I know my handwriting, but I feel like he doesn't question that handwriting because he needs a mystery. He needs a mystery to propel him forward because he's not actually caring about finding the wife's murderer. He deep down cares about making the pain go away just for a few minutes. And by sowing this big mystery, he can forget all about what actually happened to his wife and go on this journey. So it's this character in self-denial. He's plagued by guilt and a real symptom of short-term amnesia. But I think that's how you can get away, rather than people being like, well, shouldn't have Lenny realized that it wasn't his handwriting? Lenny doesn't give a shit. Lenny's in denial. Also, to rope back around, the fact that we didn't finish Natalie's story, like not in a bad way, but like we don't know what happened to her, I wouldn't be surprised, because if we're going with the linear perspective, the movie ends with Lenny killing Teddy. Lenny believing I have found my wife's murderer. He is now dead. I wouldn't be surprised if Natalie now kills Lenny. It's pretty obvious that Natalie knows that Lenny is somehow connected to the disappearance of her boyfriend, Jimmy. And she's still alive. So I would not be, and Lenny has no idea about any of this, short-term memory loss. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got another 30 minutes of the movie and it's just Natalie killing Lenny.
When I think back on how Natalie behaved towards him at the beginning of the movie, which is late in the timeline, I almost get the sense that, yes, she was willing to use him. Yes, she has treated him terribly up to this point and harbors a lot of resentment, against him for having offed her boyfriend. But there does seem to be some measure of sympathy by then, right? Like she has this weird notion that he's going to remember her. I guess she imagines that there's some connection between them. And then she gets genuinely upset when he doesn't remember her. And so I think that even if she hates his guts, right? You can hate a person's guts and still recognize that, man, they've got it rough, right? I'll still use and abuse them, but that sucks for him,
Yeah. I think Natalie is one of my favorite characters because I think she's the most realistic. Not to say you have to have a realistic, that could be a real person to be a good movie. I love Lenny and Teddy. They're over the top dynamic, but Natalie felt like a real person. She felt like in my opinion, Natalie feels like someone who is deeply unsatisfied and hates herself. I feel like she lives this backwater hose town, owns this bar, is dating a drug dealer, and and probably like getting in fights with like other drug dealers and probably fearing for her life. I think she's just deeply unsatisfied. So when she meets someone like Lenny, who in her opinion is pure hearted, he has a wife that he loves and he's trying to revenge her death. And he keeps forgetting what's happening. I feel like she sees the pureness, air quotes, in him and gets frustrated at her own inadequacy and her own evil doings in some ways. And I feel like she takes that out on him. So I think you're right. Maybe there's this version where in some moments she feels for him and she appreciates who he is and what he's trying to do is good. And then other moments he pisses her off because she's like, your goodness reminds me of how much I suck. And I hate you and you're so frustrating. And so she reminds me of like the most realistic, just a person who honestly hates herself. And I feel like there are so many people out there, or even if you don't fully hate yourself, you can relate to the idea of being frustrated with yourself. And so I really liked Natalie's character for that.
No, I do too. Like she's definitely multifaceted and how she experiences emotion. That's very real, right? We're not always purely angry, purely resentful, purely happy. And sometimes our feelings are complicated, right? Oftentimes our feelings are complicated, especially in complicated circumstances. And you can't call this an uncomplicated circumstance.
It is not your every Tuesday.
Now, my favorite guy is the guy that that spit in the...
Oh, yeah. Just completely uncalled for. Just spits in Lenny's drink.
That scene made me gag. I don't do well with that stuff.
It reminded me of the scene in Gone Girl, where just great writing and characterization, just to really hone in that this woman is a piece of garbage, and her malice and arrogance, where she just like this kind woman who helped her off the road, like said something kind of vaguely rude, and she leaves the room, and so the character spits in her Mountain Dew. I remember being like, that's great writing. You just know who that person is, and that who spits in a random stranger's drink, just garbage human. But all that to be said, this is a concept this is like the thing that really stuck with me for the movie. Just the big thing to take away. And this is something I really want to dissect with you. We got to put on our 10 hats for a minute because we're going to go into theory territory. So how I kind of really honed in on the idea of like, this is the unreliable narrator to the 100th degree. It's the most unreliable you can get. Everyone's lying. Everyone's working with fragmented information. We as the audience only get fragmented pieces of the story. The reason I love the twist wasn't, and the reason I love Christopher Nolan is always recontextualizing scenes. And what I mean by that is he'll give you a scene and you're thinking, oh, this is what this means. This character did this character did this is what they want. And then he reveals new information and that scene can take on a completely new identity, a new meaning. I mean, the easiest example is when we cut to a random scene. Again, we don't know what's happening. Lenny just kind of wakes, like kind of just like, whoa, what's happening? Natalie bursts through the door. She's been beaten up. She's bruised. She's bloody. And he's like, what's going on? And she's like, Doe did this, the drug dealer that's trying to hunt her down. She's like, you need to go get him for me. And he's like, absolutely. He's a piece of garbage. Don't you worry. It's taken care of. And then later on in the movie, it's recontextualized. That's not what happened at all. Lenny beat the crap out of her because he got frustrated with her. And so it's just doing those things. It's recontextualizing scenes for them to mean completely different things. I love Christopher Nolan. It's one of my favorite directors for that very reason. So the twist at the end of the movie, you would just expect it to recontextualize things, to change things. Oh, we thought some people murdered his wife. Oh no, Lenny murdered his wife. What a great twist. What a recontextualization. And did it do that? Yes. But this is what it did even more so. Any idea, any wiggle room or fingerhold of truth that we might be holding on to is completely ripped away. Because we are confronted with Lenny is not only unreliable because of short-term amnesia, he's unreliable because he's lying to himself. And guess what? If he doesn't actually know what happened because of his condition and he's lying to himself, we as the audience have no idea what's happening. And so with the reveal, when Teddy reveals that in fact Lenny killed his wife, it means everything in the movie is now up for grabs. We don't know what is left from right. We don't know what is up from down. Everything could be a lie at this point. So my question for you, Jeffrey, is what is, and this is what I mean by the movie is open ended, because the most clean cut narrative you can take away is this: two people broke into Lenny's house, raped his wife. Lenny shoots them, gets knocked out, gets a short term memory loss, and then after he gets short term memory loss, him and his wife kind of have this falling out and they get frustrated with each other. And then Lenny kills her, whether it's self-suicide because the wife is depressed or whether he's frustrated for some reason. And then he starts going on this journey trying to track down the second killer. But I feel like this new piece of information basically lets us realize that could be a lie in itself. Lenny could be lying that that's not necessarily what happened. So I have an internal thought process that I think would be cool if that's actually what happened in the story. But my question for you is, what do you think actually happened with Lenny that led him on down this journey?
Well, if we trust what Teddy was saying at the end, and again, we have no reason to trust anyone in this movie, then I think a fairly plausible theory is that his wife was diabetic, right? And that was a memory that he had willfully repressed, right? And so, his wife pulled the trick that Sammy's wife did, because Sammy's wife, that whole story never happened. That was just projection. And so I think that he just gave his wife one too many insulin shots. And this is a ploy on her end to prove that this is mental, right? And I think that him unintentionally killing her would make the guilt be all the more like tragic, right? And perhaps more of a driving force behind his actions, right? Is like, I did not want to kill my wife, and yet I am directly responsible for her death. This can't be the case. This is the last thing I would want. Of course, I'm going to push this down, and I'm going to believe that that guy that, raped and assaulted my wife, he's the one that killed her, right? But no one would believe me. And that's the thing I'm telling myself now that's propelling me forward in life.
That would make sense, but it just begs the question of like, I guess the notion is like the wife is testing Lenny. Like, I don't actually believe you have short-term memory loss, but even if you do, so either I'm going to test and find out you're faking it, or if you really do have it, I don't want to live this way and I'll let you kill me. So she's kind of like, either you're going to not give me the shot and boom, you're faking it, awesome, or you're going to give me the shot because it proves that you do have short-term memory loss, and I don't want to live with a husband like that. So I guess that's the route it would have to be.
Yeah, and the thing is, we're saying like either he's faking it or he's not. That's from her perspective. But of course, whether it's neurological or mental, it's not faking. It's a very real thing. That's never something that Lenny claimed is something he'll repeat over and over again to distance himself from the real harm that he did to Sammy.
And that makes sense. And that's what I would say is the most conclusive ending. But for me, and again, this is where you have to put your 10 hats and stretch the theory for a little while. This is just, I like the idea. This would be cool. I don't know about cool. It'd be really sad, but it makes it interesting. I like the idea because, again, we're constantly brought up this Sammy Jenkins story. And is he faking it? Is he not faking it? And is it really true? Like what is this short-term memory loss? Like, what is it? It almost seems made up. I mean, it's interesting that's real in real life, but it seems almost made up in this world. I like the idea, like, arguably, you can find the police report that someone broke into his house. Lenny shot and killed someone in his house. The wife was raped, but the wife lived. Like, that's arguably stuff you can find in the real world. But I like to think after that, Lenny didn't suffer a short-term memory loss issue. Maybe he was hit on the head, but he was fine. I like to think afterwards, the wife couldn't move on past the rape, the sexual assault, understandably. Like, she couldn't continue. She was depressed and distraught. And I like to think that Lenny couldn't handle that. Also, something weirdly enough, Lenny may be a dick. We don't see a lot of him before the short-term memory loss, but the bit we do see of him, he's this insurance adjuster who's unwilling to make ethical decisions. He whenever we see him and his wife together, they don't seem very happy. Like, the literal one interaction we see with them, he's kind of antagonizing her for reading the same book. Like, what's the point? That's stupid. So we kind of, I'm not saying he's therefore a dick, someone who's a dick is a murderer, but we get the idea he's not a great guy. So again, I like the idea is that she can't move past this trauma. She is depressed. He doesn't know what to do with it. And so one day he decides to put her out of her misery kind of, but without her permission. And he kills her by giving her too many insulin shots on purpose. And there is no short-term memory loss thing. There is no Sammy Jenkins. His guilt is such an extreme driver that he wipes his own memory every single time. And we have real instances of this. Like people who suffered sexual assault as children often will completely suppress it as a survival instinct. So I like the idea that he has no short-term memory loss, but he is in fact trying to survive. The guilt is so intensely strong that his survival mechanism is to completely erase his memories and to rewrite it with these false narratives. Again, I don't think that's what Christopher Nolan was going for. I just think it's a fun little fan theory.
It is a cool theory. I think it's a very compelling theory. Yeah, I think I'll watch it. Next time I watch it, I'll watch it through that lens. And that's the fun thing about movies and theories is you get exposed to different theories that completely recontextualize the film, even beyond the film's own recontextualizations.
And I would say the one scene that gives even a remote shred of like plausibility is again the very end of the movie. We end the movie with where we picked up. He has decided that Teddy is his next target. He's like, F it. I just need a John G. You're a John G. I'll go after you. We see him leave the breadcrumbs of that he himself is going to follow to track down Teddy. He writes down Teddy's license plate. He leaves a bunch of bullets sparkled throughout this truck. And then he drives to the tattoo parlor and he writes down, get a tattoo of this license plate. So he'll track down Teddy. He doesn't know who Teddy is. And then we see him look down at his hand and think to himself and tell himself, Sammy Jenkins. And we almost get this idea of like he forcibly restarts everything. It almost seems in that because all the other moments in the movie when he restarts, it seems just come out of nowhere. It's often spurred by sleep, but sometimes he'll just be sitting on the couch and then all of a sudden he'll forget. But in this one moment, it almost seemed like Lenny was like, okay, it's time to repress everything once again and start from scratch. So that's like the only slight source of like truth. And again,
That's fun.
It's probably a little A and a little B. He probably does have short-term memory loss, and he probably is like actively pushing in towards it because of his guilt.
And like I think you definitely have a point that he was not a good dude like pre-accident. Again, he's snippy with his wife. He takes pride in the fact that like he quote unquote susses out claims very quickly. In other words, he finds reasons to deny people coverage, right? Needed coverage in the case of Sammy. And he gets promotions at work and he's highly valued for that reason, right? I think he even says something along the lines of, yeah, I was really good at this. Perhaps, better than I ought to have been, but that made me valued by the company.
And that's just another example of like, again, unreliable narrator. Lenny throughout the beginning of the movie saying, I was really good at this fraudulent insurance thing because I could sniff out BS. You have to start to know the people. You have to watch their ticks. You have to know when they're lying. The whole movie, he is just getting lied and manipulated to. The two people that he kind of vaguely trusts and goes along with, lying to him, manipulating him. So he can't, he keeps coming back to, you got to trust your instinct. All I have is myself. All I have is my instinct. Doesn't help him. He's always trusting and doing the wrong things because quite literally, he has no idea who he is or what he is doing. Again, he should not have made it as far as he did. So it's just so great to hear this inner mantra. This is who I am. Again, I think that's how guilt works. I am this. I'm not this. I am this. I'm not this. I am this. I'm not this. You tell yourself over and over again, this is the truth. And you're just building upon this false narrative. And that's what we see him doing throughout this entire movie, building on this false narrative of himself.
I think that our identity, like how we view ourselves, is so built by the stories we tell about ourselves, like the narratives that we construct. That's a very compelling part of this story, is he has constructed a narrative for himself. And he plays into that narrative at the end, right? When he sets himself on Teddy's trail. And it's that narrative that gives him purpose.
He quite literally sets up and outlives his own worst narratives. And I think that's just great visual storytelling. It's so good. Man, I feel like Definitely someone smarter than us has dissected this movie in a better way than us. But I really enjoyed talking about these facets of the characters and the story. Is there anything that I didn't really cover that you feel is a remiss if we don't talk about?
Hmm. Okay, one thing I liked about Teddy and Lenny's dynamic. He's like the older brother that will pick on his younger brother incessantly, but the moment that someone else lays a finger on them is like, hey, only I can do that, right? And so he's giving Lenny genuine advice concerning Natalie. He's like, she's not to be trusted, man. She's using you. Look, here are all these reasons that she's not trustworthy, right? Don't stay at her house this night. And so like he doesn't have Lenny's best interest at heart, but at the same time, like if he's going to continue making use of him, he has to make sure that Lenny isn't lied to by anyone else, right?
It's like he has two devils on his shoulder. It's like you have an angel on your shoulder and a devil on one shoulder. He just has two devils on his shoulders. It's great because Natalie's like, don't trust Teddy. He sucks. Teddy does suck. He shouldn't be trusted. But then you have Teddy saying, don't trust Natalie. She sucks. Natalie sucks. She shouldn't be trusted. So it's just funny that they're like telling the truth about each person, but they both suck. There's not a picking. You're not picking one over the other. They're both garbage people.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate that he's never able to make that note that Natalie is also not one to be trusted. He definitely like picks a side.
Yeah, that's a good point. He never does come to the realization that she's using him.
Teddy and Natalie both use him, but Natalie gloats about it in a way that Teddy never does. Like even at the end when he's laying the facts bare to Lenny about how he's been used, he's not really taking joy in sharing this with him. He's like, listen, man, I just, I hate to tell you this, but this is how things are, right? So it's just interesting how these two people deceive in like different ways and approach it attitudinally differently.
It's also interesting. This is a whole other. I feel like you could write like a college paper about this. The moral stance of Lenny is always shifting. For example, in that scene I was talking about earlier, where I almost said Trinity, where Natalie's character is like, "Will you kill this person for me?" He is scoffs at her. He's like, "Who do you think I am? Kill a random dude? No way." And then a few scenes later, when he forgets everything and she comes in with a bloody nose and a black eye, she's like, "Dode did this to me," and he's like, "Don't you worry, I'm gonna go get him." Not a second. It's just like the moments contextualize his morals because he has nothing else to pull from. So it's just every moment is going to contextualize. So then he tracks down Dode, captures him, beats the shit out of him, tapes him and puts him in the closet. And then he falls asleep and takes a nap on the bed and wakes up. And then he finds this guy in his closet. And he's like, what the heck? And he goes to Natalie and freaks out because he has a Polaroid with with a note on it saying like, Natalie told me to do this. He's like, what the heck, Natalie, did you drag me into? So all of a sudden we see his morals have reversed. But again, it's just like, it's in those moments where his morals are decided based on what's happening in that moment, because there's no string of events to like build his morals and his understanding up. So he's a very flippant character, which again, makes sense.
Yeah, he has to decide based on the moment what his normal is. So if he wakes up in an environment where he's holding a gun, right, and there's a guy tied up to a chair. This didn't happen in the movie, but let's assume that that's just the situation he finds himself in. Well, in that moment, he's going to go, well, I guess I tie people to chairs and have guns, right? And he's going to proceed with that assumption in mind. Whereas, like, if you wake up in a motel room and you don't know where you are, your first assumption is going to be, okay, like, well, I'm just a guy and I'm at a motel room. And so to find a Polaroid of, a guy tied up and then to see that guy in your closet is going to be very shocking, right?
Like imagine he just wakes up one day in robes in a church. What if he's just like, oh, I remember my wife being murdered and I have a bunch of these tattoos on me, but I must have converted and become a Christian and found peace at some point. Like what if he gets knocked out and just put in that church the next day? Like, is that just what he's gonna like? So again, it's just like you said, he has to make assumptions on, and it's another theme that comes up. Has he been doing this for months, weeks, or years? Like, how long has it been since his wife has been murdered? Who has he become in this time span? Every time he wakes up or has a new memory, he has to recontextualize what type of person he's become over the past X amount of time. What has been building up. And like I said, though, so like we both said, the events of what he finds himself in contextualizes his morals because he just has to assume I put myself here. So if the person that put myself here must be okay with it. So I guess I'm a killer. I guess I'm a priest. I guess I'm a dude that gets drunk and wakes up on toilets.
Yeah, like he talks about how when he met with Sammy for like a second time, there was a look of recognition in Sammy's eyes, right? And immediately thought, okay, well, this guy's like acting. But he later comes to find out, well, no, that in itself is an act. That light of recognition, you just learn to do that when you are in his shoes, right? You just pretend that you know people. You just pretend that you belong. And that's how you coast.
Which is something that I loved about Guy Pearce's performance. Because Lenny was doing that in every scene. He kept like waking up in really odd scenarios, but he looked like a puppy dog. He wakes up and he's like, okay, I know I have short-term amnesia. I know I don't know why I'm here. The best thing I can do is smile, look at the people around me, and go from there. Put my best foot forward. So I loved he always had this chill vibe to him because he knew like this is the only way I can figure out what's going on, and I really liked it.
Oddly polite, yeah. Guy Pearce, I've never heard of. This is my first time seeing Guy Pearce or even hearing that name.
Oh, really? I don't know a lot of stuff he's been in, but I recognize the name. And then when I was doing research, I just looked up some stuff on Letterboxd. And I know there's been a handful of things that you and I are both familiar with, but I cannot bring them to mind right now. But yeah, I think that's Memento. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Besides, of course, our classic segment of our holy moments. Jeffrey, what is your holy moment of Memento?
I would say it's how the nonlinear editing style throws us into the headspace of our main character, right? I think that's one of the most powerful things that a story can do is it can make you experience what other people are experiencing in ways that you otherwise couldn't have. And so that would be my holy moment. It's not quite a moment so much as a technique that brought about a greater awareness, a greater sense of empathy.
Great holy moment. It really is the driving force of this film, which makes, Nolan and the actors and everyone does 10 out of 10 does a great job, but it really is that concept of not being able to trust and the short-term memories and the unlinear editing that just make this movie so unique and will be a classic in film history. Definitely what I was thinking about choosing, and surprised that I didn't, I'm surprised I didn't go with editing, something, I do on a daily basis, but the thing that ended up which I'm actually happy about, because for a movie that's so stylized in the sense of the structure, you think that's what you're going to pick. I'm happy that I ended up going with like an actual just moment. This movie never convinced me 100% by the acting. I think all the actors did a great job. Everyone did what they needed to do. It never was like my favorite part of the movie. Well, the mystery and the unraveling was my favorite part. So when this scene happened, I feel like I got floored by the acting. In this scene, we have Lenny sitting on a couch and Natalie walks in. We don't really know how they got there or what's going on, but Natalie walks in and she's pissed off. And he's like, why are you pissed off? And she's frustrated at Lenny in this moment. And she's like, well, I'm pissed off because they're sending drug dealers after me to kill me. Because again, she was dating Jimmy. Jimmy and her had a bunch of money to trade for drugs. But at the beginning of the movie, Lenny kills Jimmy. And so he's gone missing. And so now Natalie's getting all the heat for like, where'd the money go? And so she's pissed off because these people are trying to kill her. And Lenny's like, what's wrong? And she's like, ugh, you ignorant, dumb person. And she takes it out on him. She kind of starts just like chewing into him. Like, you're so dumb. Like, of course you have this issue. You have no idea what's going on. And he, again, like this puppy dog kind of like, yeah, I don't like, hey, calm down. Let's figure it out. I literally have no idea who you are, what's happening. But she just like a shark starts circling him, tears into him. She starts going after his wife, calling her horrendous things, saying these horrible, horrible remarks, like great writing, things I'm not going to say on the podcast is what she said, but really great writing. But I think Carrie Ann Moss's depiction in that moment, that acting was stellar. She circled him like a lion hunting a gazelle, saying these awful things. There's a really weird undertone of some like sexual tension. But then also there was this undertone of like, she was sad. There was a certain amount of like sadness. I just feel like she had so much in her performance in that moment, but she basically was like, "I'm gonna use you." And I love the fact that I can tell you right now I'm gonna use you, and you're not even gonna remember it. And she is so evil and sinister in such a real way. Like, so, like like it's not often people can tell that to your face because we have memories, but people use people all the time and they enjoy it and they use it for their own advantages and they don't care if people get hurt. And so she just felt so evil and she kept pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. And then finally, Lenny snaps and punches her in the face and she laughs at him. She's like, "Oh, you did it now. I'm going to use this to my advantage. Just you wait." And she goes to leave the house and she's like, "See you soon," which is just a great line. She goes and sits in the car in the driveway. And Lenny starts freaking out. He's like, "Find a pen, find a pen, find a pen." He can't find a pen because at the beginning of the scene when she walked into the house, she took all the pens, knowing that she was going to use him. Maybe not quite in this way, but she knew she was going to use him. And so he's trying to find a pen to desperately write down, "Don't trust Natalie, don't trust Natalie." And we keep getting this POV. Lenny will look out to the car and see her sitting in the car, bloody. She didn't drive away. She's just sitting in the car, bloodied and staring at him. He'll look back for a pen, look for a pen, look back at her. She's just dead staring at him. Look for a pen, look for a pen. All of a sudden, door slams shut. She gets out of the car and he's suddenly like, "Where am I? What's going on?" And that's when she comes in and is like, "Oh, my boyfriend or the drug dealer Dodo beat the shit out of me. He wants the money. Will you please go take care of him?" And Lenny's like, "Of course I will." So just that moment of Carrie Ann Moss's performance, I thought was so good. And I just specifically the sinister that she was able to bring and that staring of just, what I know what's about to happen, but very soon you won't know. So chilling moment.
It's like so much anger and hatred born from a sense of futility, right? There's nothing that she can do about her situation. And so she's going to let it all out against this helpless man. And she'll end up using him, but at the end of the day, I don't know, her boyfriend's still dead. And so that was very cool to see that moment recontextualized later too. But I agree, that was incredible. That was, I think, easily the best acted moment.
Yeah,
in the film.
Yeah, I would agree. Honestly, Jeffrey, I didn't even think about that until you said it. Not only was this a recontextualized moment in itself, it's recontextualized later when we find out that Lenny killed her boyfriend and she probably knows it. So again, she's saying some horrible things and uses him, but like, understandably, she thinks this dude killed her boyfriend. So now we have another recontextualized. Oh, she's not just like evil Satan saying these things. She's angry and has a motivation for a reason to use Lenny. Wow, what a great movie. Okay, we said it a lot at the beginning of the podcast, like back in season 1. I feel like we've been said it in a long time, but absolutely, this is a movie rewatch. I feel like we should almost do a scale. Like we should do this for every episode, like 1 to 10.
Oh yeah,
this is a 10 because of enjoyability. But like if there's any movie to rewatch because the plot is so dense or things are recontextualized so you don't even know what's going on until halfway through, it's Memento. Absolute 10 out of 10 rewatch for those reasons.
I feel like that's the case for a lot of Christopher Nolan movies.
Yeah.
I have to watch Inception for the 4th time because the first time I didn't finish it because there were so many people talking through it and I had to leave early. Second time, so many people were talking through it. And then third time, like the same. I could not focus in any of the viewings that I had of Inception. And it wasn't even the case where like, oh, I was being distracted from time to time. It's like I could not focus on the movie because the movie was not the focus of anyone in the room.
Have you finished it then?
I think I finished it once.
Yeah, you gotta rewatch it. I think it's Nolan's magnum opus. It's just one of the. I think it's my top 5 favorite movies. It's just the best, just the best. I wish I could relive it like for the first time. It's one of those movies that it's like, man, that was so good. You don't know how good it is in that first watch.
Maybe for the podcast.
Yeah, I would 100% put that on the podcast someday.
I hope we to bring it back to something I said at the beginning. I hope that we grow in viewership soon because I don't want to wait 10 seasons to watch The Matrix, but I don't want to watch The Matrix before I watch it for the podcast. So.
Oh yeah. You gotta wait for it, for sure. So, something just realized in this moment that I find encouraging. I love to see like there are a bunch of directors whose first films weren't great and they grew over time and they got better. And that's normal. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it is true. There are some prodigies out there, and there are some people that were just gosh darn born to make movies. And I love that this is Nolan's one of his first movies made on like shoestring budget. Again, it's still like $8 million. That's a lot of money. But compared to like $200 million, like some other big blockbusters, it's basically nothing. And again, contained story, contained amount of actors. And it was it was just crushed it. And the type of storytelling and his scripts and the visual storytelling evolves, but it's still it reeks of Nolan from this movie all the way up until Oppenheimer. And it's the same about Tarantino. Just when we watch Reservoir Dogs, his first movie, knocked it out of the park. Shoestring budget, very few sets, just like a solid cast. And they gave him a few $1 million and he crushed it. And it reeked of Tarantino just as much as like, Once Upon a Time of Hollywood reeked of Tarantino in a good way. So just like they came smashing and they're still smashing it out of the park. And I think that's just really cool that there are very few filmmakers that are kind of like that.
I agree. You know what I would like to see? I wonder if there's a director that made not just mediocre, not just okay, but like terrible movies early on that eventually improved in their craft such that their last several movies are like genuinely good, if not like masterpieces.
That would be really fascinating. And that 100% has to exist. I wouldn't disagree, but I really feel that any filmmaker that makes it in the world was good to begin with, because I feel like, yes, you get more money, you get more fancy cameras and fancy lights and yada, yada, but a good director is a good storyteller. And yes, storytelling evolves to be better and better and better for sure. But I just think the ones that make it had it since day one and they nurtured it and they grew it. But even in their original work, even wasn't stellar, you could see the story and the intent behind it. And that's what I kind of believe. Again, you 100% are going to have growth and you are going to have that like I sucked and now I'm good moments. But I really do believe like the directors that are like that everyone knows their name, I feel like their original stuff was still good because they had that what makes a good director storytelling. I think that's just born in some people.
I feel like that applies more to writer directors though, like the ones that write the films that they direct. Maybe. Does Scorsese write his movies?
I don't know. I know Nolan and Tarantino do, which I was about to say. I think that's just a sign of a great director is if you write your stories because you have an understanding.
I would agree
there
as
are
well.
some
That's
amazing,
the ideal.
Yeah, but there's some amazing directors that don't write their own stuff.
There's a great skill in being able to take a script that would otherwise be okay and like turn it into something great through the direction.
Yes, yeah, that's so true. Like I'm curious what some of the best movies ever made on a mediocre script. And if it's a mediocre script, why did the director like? What did the director must have saw the vision in it. Like I wonder what director read a mediocre script but saw the vision into making it great.
Yeah, it's like they read the script and it's like this is a fine script, but there are ideas in it that I could express very well in like film language specifically. They just have to approach it at an angle that the writer didn't even consider. I know there are movies like that. I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head either. That would be interesting research to do. But anyways, that ends our conversation about Memento. But Jeffrey, what are you going to rank it? What are you going to give? I'm really curious considering I don't think you've seen a ton of Nolan's work and you knew nothing about this going in. And it's a pretty crazy watch.
I've seen Interstellar. I've seen this movie. I've seen The Dark Knight. And maybe at some point I'd seen the prequel and the sequel and Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay. So you've seen a decent amount.
I'm gonna give this maybe a 3.9, 3.8, perhaps a 3.8.
I think I'm right along with you. I'm thinking a 3.75 or a 3.8. I think it was such a great idea. I love the story about how it got made. I really enjoyed it. But there was just something that didn't draw me in enough, that's so vague. I know. All I know is that the level of enjoyment, again, I'm ranking these off of like enjoyment. You could rank them off like how much they affected film history or just the technicality behind it. But I put that to point, but also how much to actually enjoy it. And the fact that Little Women is still my favorite movie of the season, it says a lot. But I think this movie is a 5 out of 5 on execution. It's spinning on all gears. It's beautifully written, directed, and acted. But I think just overall, how it just impacted me while I was watching it in the moment, I think it's like a 3.8.
Yeah, I think that this is a movie that makes use of the medium, right?
Yeah.
It makes use of editing to tell a story that could not have otherwise been told. And I guess you could write a story that's being told backwards, but it's just not the same, right, as seeing it and experiencing it with all the colors and sounds and textures of real life.
Definitely a movie that or definitely a story that's best in film. I mean, honestly, I started reading the short story that Jonathan Nolan wrote, and I didn't finish it just because, not that it wasn't good, but I just felt like it was so great watching the story unfold. And when I was just reading it, I wasn't nearly as compelled. But I digress. Well, it's 1 a.m. and I'm very tired, so I'm gonna get us on out of here. Normally, we spin the wheel, but we messed up with our scheduling a little bit. We're trying to release our Hollywood Halloween special on the 29th. But that got messed up. This episode will come out then. So instead, we're going to be watching Psycho, and that will be releasing November 5th. So our Halloween special is Psycho. We ran a little poll. You guys voted. So we're watching Psycho. Thanks so much for voting on the poll. Super excited to watch it. So go ahead and watch Alfred Hitchcock Psycho for next time we meet up. Until next time, follow us on our Instagram, TikTok, Reels, Facebook, YouTube. Remember, don't bury your guilt, because if you do, you'll eventually kill someone and steal their suit. That is not a good thing to do. So be honest. Until next time. Bye.